There are only a handful of feelings in life that are hard to top. Marrying the girl of your dreams, seeing your children born, and I'm assuming death by snoo-snoo.
Yes!
But is there really anything that feels better than being completely right? So imagine my ecstasy when I saw Gore and Alan Ng of Film Threat go through a letter they received from a longtime Hollywood writer. It laid out exactly how shitty things have become for certain groups there thanks to DEI initiatives, and it turned out it was practically word for word what I've been saying here, without so much as one source or insider.
Perfection.
Stick around and we'll go through the letter and come to grips with exactly how bad things are and how bad they're still gonna get. See you on the other side. So let's be clear, this isn't my scoop. I watched this myself yesterday on Film Threat, and after pausing and patting myself on the back over and over, toward the end Chris suggested that if you had a YouTube channel, you should do a video on this and spread the word, so that's what I'm going to do here. Last thing before getting into the letter itself, I can't verify any of this myself. That said, Gore is a longtime professional, so it's my assumption that while the letter is being published anonymously for obvious reasons that'll become clear once we get reading here, I'm completely certain that he wouldn't have published it if he couldn't verify the author himself. So with that in mind, let's get started. An open letter from a white writer to the film and TV business. For the last 20 years, I've been a working professional screenwriter. Between 2004 and 2018, I was sent on hundreds of meetings with some of the best studio executives, producers, and directors in the business. I loved it. It was an opportunity to chat with like-minded people who love film, grew up with movies, and were making them at the highest level. We'd discuss ideas, plot characters and their arcs, and who's the audience. Maybe chat about subtext and themes. It felt like an episode of Jon Favreau's Dinner for Five. Sometimes you'd end up getting work, other times you made a great connection. Everyone was intelligent, film and TV savvy, and had a deep understanding of the business side of the industry. In 2019, things started to change, and quickly. Suddenly, subtext and themes became the main point of discussing a project or IP. The first question in every meeting became, what can we say with this project? Or what can we teach people with this story? Plot, character, and audience were now secondary, and sometimes not even discussed. These new execs weren't savvy and business-minded execs. They were young, with no track record or comprehension of the bottom line. When the streaming war started and the money hose was turned on, those experienced executives started relying on these young Turks to pick up the slack. But the kids were less focused on the hero's journey and more concerned with taking down the patriarchy.
I told you so. Just doesn't quite say it.
I mean, is that not word for word what I've been complaining about here for the entirety of my channel's existence? Like the bio for my channel reads, I'm not in the entertainment industry and never have been. I don't have any inside scoop and I don't pretend to. Like most of you, I am just a fan of things and I'm passionate about them. That said, I've always been hyper-focused on politics, so this was clear to me from the outside from just a culture war perspective. It's why it's been clear to most of you as well, despite all the gaslighting by the entertainment industry telling you you're not seeing what you're seeing. And even if you are, hey, it's great that it's happening, so shut up, bigot. Okay, back to the letter. Which leads us to the next point. The reality is that for the past 5 years, white, straight, male writers and directors with experience and successful track records have been sidelined. We talk about it over coffee or after screenings. We've essentially been told that because of our race and gender, we need not apply. At one point, my agent told me that they couldn't put me up for any OWAs, open writing assignments, or TV staffing jobs because the execs only wanted to hear takes on the material from BIPOC, or female, or LGBTQ writers. Some shows even started instituting staffing quotas that 40 to 50% of the writing staff had to be people of color. Hey, remember me harping on Disney having this webpage out there and being excited to release this image declaring their clear quota system? None of this has really been much of a secret if you know where to look or you're willing to take them at their word. I know many showrunners who hate this. Not because they didn't want to hire new writers and foster them. They didn't want half their staff coming from a pool of young, inexperienced writers who knew nothing about working in a writer's room, production, post, or deadlines. Is this illegal? Probably, but hey, I'm not an attorney, and there's no way to find out anyway, because if you ask any questions about this, you'll be labeled a racist or called out for your white male privilege. If you so much as raise an eyebrow, there's a risk you'll never work again. Why this is anonymous. This may not be obvious at first glance. There sure seem to be a lot of white dudes at the Golden Globes, right? Well, this doesn't impact the top 2% of writers, showrunners, and directors, since they're in the rarefied air where they get to work no matter what. It's those of us with decades of experience working on some of your favorite TV shows and films that are now sitting on the sidelines, waiting. No institution reinforces this more than the WGA. One glance at their monthly calendar of events shows a Latinx Writers Committee meeting, an LGBTQ+ Writers Committee meeting, a Committee of Black Writers meeting, a Middle Eastern Writers Committee meeting, a Women's Writers Committee meeting, and an Asian American Writers Committee meeting, to name just a few. Can you imagine if there was a White Writers Committee meeting? We might be murdered. And the saddest part of all this is that most of the people who would fill that room are some of the most liberal people I know, people who have gone out of their way to foster new and unique voices. Check out the WGA's own 2022 Inclusion and Equity Report and make your own conclusion on the WGA's priorities on this. When creating a writer's profile on the WGA website, there is one box to check if you're heterosexual, 3 choices under transgendered, and 6 under LGBTQ. Not sure what those statistics have to do with writing a great episode of The Witcher.
Fuck.
This mindset was very present at the last in-house WGA meeting held before the strike of 2023. Every 3 years before we have a new deal with the studios, the negotiating committee sits on a stage and members throw their complaints at them. And God bless them, they sit there for hours on end listening to a bunch of writers bitch and moan, like I'm doing. The complaints at these meetings over the last 2 decades are always the same. How do we get more money and more residuals? In 2023, the meeting had a decidedly different tone. Very few complaints had to do with money this time around. There was a litany of complaints about not enough diversity in the ranks. Again, I've said this 10 times on this channel if I've said it once. Studios have been hiring activists, not creatives. These people don't give a single solitary fuck about the IPs, the characters, the lore, and clearly not the fans that made them valuable. These are entirely just vehicles for what the critical drinker calls the message. They don't care if they ruin the franchise, destroy the characters, and alienate fans. They're locusts, devouring a field and then moving on to the next one. It's why as fans, we've sat back and watched as the franchises we've loved for decades have been mistreated and ruined, while modern creatives use them as Trojan horses filled with their politics. It's why at one point last year I said that these people are entirely interchangeable. You'll never convince me that you couldn't do wholesale changes of mid-level execs from various woke corporations and switch them all around and they'd never miss a beat. Would we have really even known had the VP of Bud Light, who was responsible for this atrocious campaign, been the showrunner for She-Hulk? What exactly would have been different, do you think? Anything? Young writers asking, how come I've worked for 2 years as a TV writer and I'm not a showrunner yet? A position that should take at least a decade of experience, if not 2, to reach. How do we make sure that the guild will fight for staffing requirements? I always thought that to survive in this business, it's a yearly, monthly, daily hustle. There are no guarantees, especially when it comes to staffing on a TV show. What I took away from that night is that these young Turks think working in film and TV is just a fun thing that anyone can do, and they can use this opportunity to put their stamp on the world. Can you blame them? It was easy to get here, especially when talent takes a back seat to fitting a quota. Why worry? The showrunner and their number one, the most experienced writer or producer outside the showrunner, will pick up the slack and more than likely finish your insipid work. They can't complain about that episode you turned in late or didn't turn in at all, or they'll be called a racist or a bigot or something else when they get a call from HR. It's just easier to shut up and run cover for these kids who aren't ready for the big time. I mean, other than this guy having the balls to say it, is any of this surprising in the least? As fans, we've been seeing the horrible product caused by this, and even if we weren't sure why it was happening, we all saw the undeniable results. The blame for this mess is threefold. Young creative execs with no understanding the business or what audiences want gained too much influence during the streaming wars. They also took it upon themselves to lead the charge in reinterpreting IP, changing successful comic books, novels, and remakes into projects that had something to say, not entertain. Why even bother with IP if you don't respect the source material? Guys, look, I promise, I didn't write this anonymous letter. Scout's honor. But seriously, I may as well have, right? The WGA followed their lead and threw a huge part of their own membership under the bus in a race to bring in new members. And lastly, this new class of writers who weren't ready yet to step up to the plate worked on a lot of product that the general public didn't want to see and didn't relate to. What happens next is anyone's guess. TV is contracting. There were 600 TV shows in the last year, and now there are only going to be, from what I hear, 300. When it comes to film, there are even fewer jobs than ever. If we don't get back to telling great stories and making profitable shows and movies, with AI right around the corner, the business may never recover. So let's start having those old school meetings again. The ones where you talk about story and characters and what the audience wants. And let's go back to hiring the best writers, the ones with the skill set and creativity, and not just one with the right skin color or sexual preference. Well, 3 cheers to this guy and to Chris and Alan at Film Threat for giving him a platform to voice his concerns. While I, and you of course, knew most of this instinctively based on the steaming piles of shit being foisted on us by Hollywood over the past few years, it is nice to know that yet another conspiracy theory has turned out to be 100% right. I'm looking forward to more and more stories like this coming out because it's the only way to get audiences to actually react and potentially force Hollywood to change to accommodate them. Here's hoping. Until next time, thanks for watching.